this episode of the Better Health Podcast, join parents Karabo Mokoena and Jarius Lodewyckx as they embark on a compelling journey on the complexities of navigating mental health as parents.
We are here today with the Dis-Chem Better Health Podcast. It is such a pleasure to be on this with you. Why didn't you introduce yourself for a bit, and then I'll introduce myself.
Cool. So I'm pretty excited to be chatting with you, Jarius. My name is Karabo. I am a mommy blogger with Black Mom Chronicles. The platform is really for mental health and conscious parenting advocacy, and I do that through writing and content creation. And this is one of my most favorite topics. So I'm really excited.
Amazing. Sure. Yeah, I'm Jarius. I'm a dad from Durban. I started a thing called Dads with Prams, and really just exploring what mental health and parenting looks like. For myself and our journey, and maybe I can give you a bit of background of our journey as myself and my wife. I don't know what your experience has been, but that initial stage of meeting or finding out from your gynecologist that you are pregnant is it's like a cherry on the top of any person's day, majority of the time. We took a bit of time to fall pregnant, and we've been married quite a bit of time before we wanted to have kids. But our journey after that was actually quite intense. Our boy was born, firstly, prematurely. He was born at 28 weeks, and he was in hospital for about three months and a bit. And but during my wife's pregnancy, it was actually also quite challenging. She faced major health challenges. She ended up in ICU for a number of days. Our boy, there was in the pregnancy itself, there was some health challenges and concerns around growth impairments and Down syndrome, and having to see different specialists, and different tests had to be done. Fast forwarding from that, my wife is fine health-wise now, but after that, she really faced some tremendous postpartum depression. She was hospitalized for a number of weeks. So I ended up being a single dad with our little boy after he came home for about 5 weeks on my own. I went into some depressive episodes as well, and burnout following that. And it's been this incredible journey from that of understanding how mental health and parenting comes together. I'm really intrigued to hear your side and your story of your journey in that space.
Thank you for sharing your story with me. I think it's so incredible, and it's also, I could get how difficult it was to have such a rough start to your parenting journey, particularly for something that you were really planning for and really had the hope and prospects of. So I'm really looking forward to getting more of that. I was 25 when I fell pregnant. I had recently been engaged. And it was a huge surprise to both me and my fiancé at the time. But it was also an exciting period for us, However, I think I underestimated whether or not I was capable of doing it. And I think soon after the birth of my first daughter, who's now 6, I actually realized that I have no clue what I'm doing, but particularly I have no template for doing this, because at the point I fell pregnant, I had been in therapy quite recently, and I was really starting to realize how much grief had really crippled my life. I dealt with so much of that as a child growing up. I lost both my parents by the time I was 16, and I really hadn't done work to navigate that, but we survived through life, right? And then you have children, and then something completely switches, because now you really have to learn how to be accountable for somebody else, and then you have to deal with tears. Like a simple thing like a child crying was so triggering for me, because it's a form of communication, but you know how you live through the frustration of like, I don't know what you're saying, I don't know what to do for you. And then the first few weeks and months of raising my daughter, I realized how lonely it was, because for us, traditionally as a mother, after I give birth, I'm meant to go to my mother-in-law and stay with her for a couple of months as I really get trained up into motherhood. I missed my mother dearly at that particular point in my motherhood journey, but it's actually been such a beautiful journey, because it's really made me gave me so much comfort, Jarius, to say that my mother wouldn't have wanted me to be crippled by grief forever. She really would want me to live my life. And now I get an opportunity to mother these 2 children, but it's been a constant journey of trying to figure out how that looks like, because I have no template. I didn't grow up with my mother. I was taken away from her when I was a small baby. I lived with my paternal aunt, and her love language was just tough. So I experienced a lot of emotional and physical abuse growing up as a child. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I parent these children outside of the experiences that I had? Because that wasn't nice for me, and I don't want to give my children the same experience. So how do I figure this out? And it's been like a day-to-day journey of doing that, of experiencing my own trauma now, even as an adult. I get triggered every day by my children. But instead of reacting from that place of trigger, it always takes me back to say, what is that trigger trying to tell you about your own experience? And then it's a mental health journey of, oh gosh, I have to go back and try to figure what happened to me so that I can move past that pain. Yeah, so that's how that journey has looked like for me. I've appreciated it, but it's been quite the work.
Sure. Thank you for sharing. That's an incredible tough space to work through. And I don't know about you, but I've experienced parenthood has really forced me to dive into things that I either thought I've already dealt with or things that I didn't know I had to deal with. In our journey with my wife and I, it's been so unique for us, and we've realized how unique everybody's journeys are, that there's really no story that compares to each other. And like you mentioned, there's no template. There's nobody can prepare you for parenthood. Nobody can prepare you for what your story is going to look like. And that's one of the things that we found was actually quite complicated and complex, because you were facing stuff that very few people would understand, and very few people would comprehend of saying, hey, what is this about? How does that work? The biggest challenge for us was our own personal mental health, understanding how that impacts into our mental health. In my wife's journey was particularly around postpartum depression, and as a husband, I look back at those times and I realize how, I want to use the word for myself, ignorant I was in understanding the potentials of those things, the potential of postpartum depression in your partner. It wasn't something that was really discussed with us. It wasn't something that we were made aware of, that, hey, this is something that you could potentially go through. We were thrown some of the comments of baby blues here or there, but it wasn't at any point explained to us, hey, this could potentially be a very intense experience.
Can I ask, how did that journey look like? What do you feel like were some of the symptoms that you probably missed, and how did that journey look like for her to finally get a diagnosis? Because I think a lot of the times we sit at home thinking, oh, it's just the blues, but we're actually going through a depression, but we don't know.
Yeah. That's such a good question. It's only in retrospect that I've been able to identify the things. I think as a new parent, you're so hopeful that this is going to be such a brilliant and beautiful picture that you don't always see the signs. And that was definitely true for us. Some of the typical signs, and the most clearest sign for us, is that my wife felt very overwhelmed every time she had to deal with our boy. She constantly wanted to pull away, or wanted to not deal with something that needed his needs met, if I can call it that.
Yeah, I think you're talking about something so interesting, because then we have to have a conversation about what's normal and what's not. And for me, where pregnancy was concerned, like, I was overwhelmed from like the first few months. I think a lot of us also are not taught that, like, those first few days of like your milk coming in, you go through the blues, so it's also just a matter of education and not knowing certain things. So now you give birth to this child, and now it's so tough to like get out of bed, because your sleeping patterns are all over the place, right? You're not taking showers as usually as you do. Getting out of bed is pretty normal because you're taking care of yourself. So that's when I started trying to get the confidence of actually reaching out and getting out of the house. Because simple things like that, because you'll stay cocooned in that space for like a very long time. Like, the thought of going out with a baby like
Yeah.
the the
sounds like-
packing bags and the doing this and doing that. You'd
Sounds
rather
scary.
skip it and stay inside the house. But then, how to what extent is that actually isolating yourself from like social relationships that are actually so important, because that's who we are as people. So did you find that you kind of were just alone for a better part of that experience? Did that feel lonely for you guys?
Yeah, just a comment. I have to say, like, one of the things that I've realized is that women's bodies take a beating in that process. I really think it's something that gets
Yeah.
that.
But it's also so dangerous. I don't
We
think
don't
we have
fully
conversations
understand,
about how
like,
dangerous
yeah,
it actually
it
can
is,
be.
yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, but part of who you are,
Yeah.
that it filters right through into your professional life, your workspace. How did that you experience that in that engaging
Yeah.
your work environment whilst being a mom?
Yeah. It was quite interesting for me, actually. I was working in corporate at that point. I was in human resource. I was doing recruitment, and I absolutely loved it because I love being with people, and helping people get work was exciting. And it wasn't anymore when I got back after maternity leave. I was not as present as I could have been. I had a yearning for something different, and I think a lot of it changes for a lot of us as women. I've had conversations with a lot of women who some can't wait to get back to work. So I think that's why it's such a relative experience. Some women cannot wait to just get back into working because they really love doing it, and it doesn't mean they don't like motherhood or hate motherhood, but they are able to kind of create that balance for themselves. And it didn't look like that for me, and I think I decided to surrender to what I felt like I needed at that time, and it got me into the world of freelancing and all of that stuff. So it really redirected my life. It really changed my life, and I think parenting really does that. And how was that for you? How long did it take for you to go back to work, and how were those dynamics as you went back?
Yeah, I really like what you're saying is that how parenthood actually in some ways reveals a part of us that we never really knew existed, or that we've been keeping in the background for a long time. And when you become a parent, you almost, there's an
Birth.
opportunity.
It's like you give birth to something else.
There's an
eh?
opportunity for something new to come to the forefront and say, hey, what are the things that I actually value? What are the things that are actually important to me? In consultation with medical professions, their suggestion to us, she needs to get back to work. So we actually went back earlier. We only went back after 3 months of maternity leave. But it was really from a space of having the right people in our corner, having the right conversations, asking the right questions to see, is this the best idea to continue with maternity leave, or would it be helpful for her to come back earlier? And that really helped her in her journey of just some stability, some kind of structure to know between this time and this time, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
I know what's going to come during the day. When I get home, I know I need to do X, Y, and Z. It's not this, you at home from when the baby wakes up, sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're awake with them until whenever they decide to go to bed. Like, you don't have that experience. So it really helped her along the journey. I really took on a lot of pressure, I want to say, anxiety, just feeling the pressure of my wife being hospitalized for postpartum depression, our prem boy at home for 5 weeks after that. So I really actually ended up in a space of burnout. I couldn't take on much more, where short-term memory loss was a big thing. I struggled to concentrate. I really ended up in a position where the impact on my professional life became severe, to such an extent where I made a decision in my will to say, for 2 months, I'm going to take a break and say, I'm going to be at home. I'm just going to take a 2 months kind of extended leave. And that really helped me to regain some of the energy that I needed. And again, it was such an interesting space coming back from that. How very much a similar experience to you, asking the question, well, what do I actually see my future look like after this? How do I want to engage with my family and my kids and that space? So also allowed me to veer into different things and new adventures. And one of the things that I really started asking is the building of community, the building of people, building relationships and pockets of people around you. And that led me to starting a thing that is now known as Dads with Prams. And it really was birthed out of the space of, hey, I need, as a dad, I need some support structures. I need community around me. And what does it look like? And I'm pretty sure if I'm a dad and I'm looking for that, I'm pretty sure there's other dads that are looking for the same thing. And that was one of the things that I started leaning towards, saying, how do I engage with other dads? And asking them questions around this journey of parenthood and mental health, and how do you manage your space. And I don't know if your journey around engaging with other moms and community, and what things did you embark on that really was things that helped you alongst your journey as a mom?